Welcome to Foodytime. I'm Jay Fettigan, and in this episode I talk with Jacqueline Church. Jackie's a fascinating person who gives tours of Boston's Chinatown. She also provides food access to seniors. She has a charitable organization called Fan Chinatown, and boy, I've got to tell you, she gives some great recommendations for restaurants and bakeries, where to go, and really how to enjoy Chinatown. So we talk about a whole lot more too, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Welcome to Foodytime. Thank you so much for being a part of this show. And can you tell me a little bit about yourself? It seems that you've got, I'd say, a background of reinventing yourself and finding new paths, and then kind of ending up where you are now. If you could just fill me in a little bit on that.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I do have a quite an unconventional path, but I'm really delighted at this late stage of my life to finally be in a place where all these things have come together. So I came to Boston, like a lot of people, to go to school. I went to law school at Northeastern, practiced for a couple of years, and realized that I had the best job I could have imagined in law, and it wasn't enough for 90 hours of my week every week for the rest of my working life. So went off into some consulting and liked that a lot. Did that for about 9 years and sort of topped out where I was at. Did some startup stuff and some business development stuff. And every place I was sort of learning a new skill set or learning a new application for the skills that I already had. And then when I was working for one of the high-tech startups, I was really impressed with myself because I was making big money and I had a hot little sports car, and very proud to go home and tell my grandmother, who was still alive at that time, about my big new job. And she said something to my mom in Japanese, which I don't speak. And I said, "Oh, what'd she say?" And Mom looked at me kind of blank and she said, "It's just money." And that kind of cut.
There's wisdom there.
Well, I mean, it was her way of saying to me, like, I know that that's not the most important thing to you, right? So what are you doing? What are you doing, right?
Right.
So it caused me to think, and it was actually true. I had a couple of good jobs and a couple of really stinky ones. Just working for, it was back in the days of stupid money flying around and people, doing startups with no business acumen, no plans, no nothing, And I finally just quit that. I was doing some freelance writing, trying to figure out what the next steps were, and literally ran into a friend on the street who was leading a tour of Chinatown tour. And he looked at me, he said, "I'm going to call you later." I came home and said to my husband, "I think Jim's going to ask me to do tours with them." And my husband said, "You would be great at that. You should do it." It's like, okay. So he always jokes because I like to talk to strangers, and this poor man that I married is an introvert. So, it's kind of painful for him anytime we get in a Uber or a taxi, because by the time we get to our destination, I know the guy's, country of origin, his mother's famous dish, and, where he gets the food he loves.
My wife and I are the same way. It's like everyone she meets, it's like a job interview.
But it's like it's just how we are. So what I have found now that I actually own and operate Boston Chinatown Tours, I married into a Cantonese family, so this was a new experience for me as well. Learned a whole lot, and I have a good foundation from that first job that I took when I was working for someone else doing these tours. But I'm always curious. In fact, I used to have a blog, and my tagline was "Ever curious, always hungry." And I'm going through a website redesign right now, and I'm debating with my current web designer, like, should we just go back to that? Because, I think it's a simple distillation of the things that really matter, things I'm curious about. But what I found is that I have an opportunity to be a bridge to the Chinatown community for people who are outside the Chinatown community, but curious and eager to learn and supportive. And that helps both ends of that equation. And I happen to just be in the right place at the right time for the first time in my life where I can do those things. help people understand the challenges that Chinese immigrants have come through and the resiliency and the resourcefulness and the current issues and all of that. But, of course, it's all about food at one level, right? So
Right.
if I can, feed people, if I can cook with people, if I can share food with people, then that's my sort of sweet spot. And
Well, in food, I mean, isn't food a great bridge, a cultural bridge, a great way for people to, go into a restaurant in a neighborhood where maybe they don't usually go and see people and eat different foods and experience different cultures?
And I was just talking with someone the other day about how a recipe is sort of cipher to another culture, right? You can look at a recipe and say, oh, like this is a technique that we've seen before. It's very different from one we've had before. And people can draw those kinds of connections with other cultures that are not easy to do in other ways, especially in a lot of our lives. We don't cross paths with people who are very radically different from us. That's why we glom on to the cab drivers, because it's our only experience to meet someone.
Right.
But I find that food is a great connector. And a lot of times on my tour, I'll be explaining some food tradition that immigrant Chinese had or traditional Chinese had. And someone on the tour will invariably say, oh, my Polish grandmother used to do the same thing. Or, my family in Italy always ate everything that from the animal that they butchered. These things are
Yes.
a common thread particularly in immigrant families, right? So a lot of immigrant families.
Well, my grandmother, her favorite part was like the chicken neck. So she was from southern Italy, and that was that. And the other thing that she liked the most was what she called the heel of the bread. The piece of bread that you cut off that nobody ever eats. Those were her favorite.
Me too. Me too. My nieces who are now in college and senior in high school, when they were kids, they used to call it the bread butt, and so that's what we call it. And I always get the bread butt, so that's good. But yeah,
Yes.
the immigrant history is, very rich and diverse in Boston, but Boston as a city has not been traditionally set up so that we come across each other. We sort of have our 23 neighborhoods,
Right.
and the T runs, only one goes cross town, right? And
Yeah.
so it sort of was designed to keep everybody in their separate enclaves.
It wasn't ever. I mean, and frankly, Boston is not very welcoming to immigrants or different cultures, and it does not have a stellar reputation, especially among.
I mean, it's changing, and it's changed a lot since I've been here.
Absolutely.
But when I first arrived, it was definitely a feeling of, if you have to ask what the name of this street is, then you don't belong here. And I'm sorry, in most cities, there's street signs, so I wouldn't have to bother you. But it's a very different place now. And I do feel like food has been an entree for me. I love to teach people to cook. I love to cook. I love to feed people. And I've done some, adult ed programs. I have private cooking clients. But of course, one of the first things that always brings people to Chinatown is the food, right? Their Chinese friend took them to a banquet and they said, wow, this is fantastic. And they go back to the same place their Chinese friend took them to, and they're maybe too timid to go into any other place in Chinatown. And so
or dim sum. I mean, I know so many people that go into Chinatown for dim sum and then bring in friends or other people who
Yep.
who would normally do something different.
I was tickled to have several tours in the last couple of days. I'm glad that I still have a voice for you, because it was the end of the Lunar New Year holiday, which is a 2-week holiday.
Yes.
And so we have all kinds of fun and crazy food traditions and other types of traditions. But I had back-to-back tours on Saturday and then the Lion Dance Parade tour on Sunday. And so I was really tickled on I think it was the Lion Dance Parade. We end up the tours with dim sum or a meal. And that was the Lion Dance Parade, because there was a family with some teenagers, and one of the teenagers was eager to try chicken feet, which I know is quite unusual for most people. And they're delicious and I love them, but I don't often get them because people are a little skittish about trying them. But I'm always encouraging people. I'd love for you to try whatever you want to try. You don't have to like it. You don't have to eat it, but I can show you how to eat it and I can tell you what's really good here. And so she was really eager to try it, and she wound up really liking it. And that whole basket of chicken feet got shared around the table. And, the first bite's a little unusual for most people, but once you taste it, you kind of
Mhm.
click in and you forget about what you're eating. It's just delicious. So,
Oh,
so that kind of stuff really, really excites me. And the Chinese grocery stores are very unusual for most
mhm.
people because we
Right.
have the huge live fish tanks. We've got a
Mhm.
butcher section. We've got a huge produce section with vegetables most people don't see anywhere else. So it's really fun to take people and explore with them. And especially if I have someone on the tour who likes to cook, because I'm eager to show them every single thing they need to buy to make their stir fries sing, to make their chicken more tender, to buy this, to do that.
It almost seems to me like you give the kind of experience that if you're visiting a relative or a friend who lives in Chinatown or something, that's what you showing them the stores, helping them understand. Could you talk about that? Is that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's very common is that people don't understand the diversity of Chinese food.
Mhm.
Um, the the restaurant experience for most people is that, especially if they are not presenting as Chinese, they will either only know the dishes that are kind of Americanized dishes,
Right.
or they will be steered toward that, not because Chinese people don't want you to have the good food, but they're trying to take a guess based on what you look like
And what's
about what you
safe, I
might most
imagine.
enjoy,
Yeah,
right?
There's safe people food. There's safe food that
that,
That's right. That's
that
right. So
people
how
will.
about some sweet and sour pork? How about General Gao's chicken?
Right.
Maybe you'd like some chicken fingers,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And most of the Chinese restaurants, even though they might serve very good, authentic regional cuisine, they will also have a cadre of dishes, a list of dishes that will be for, the people that maybe really want to have some Chinese food, but not too outside of the realm of what they're familiar with.
Right.
So I teach people, about regional cuisines, 5 different out of the 30 plus regional cuisines that exist in China. I mean,
Hmm.
if you think about Italy, right? Back in the old country, it was only reunited in 1861,
Right.
united as one country, right? So you
Yeah.
had someone from Verona would never recognize a dish from Sardinia or Umbria,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So they're all different regional cuisines.
Hmm.
So I did a talk at the Friends of North End Library
Hmm.
um, recently, and I showed them the map of Italy and helped them understand that I understood regional Italian cuisine. I said, now let's look at China. And when I superimposed the map of China over that map of Italy, they're like, whoa.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So we
Uh,
have, the ocean down here, and over here we've got the Gobi Desert up here. We've got, just huge the Himalayas over here. So we've got regional cuisines. We've got, barriers that were geographic barriers,
hmm.
and we've
Hmm.
got people like the Portuguese who are great traders. We always talk about the spice trade, but they had enslaved people in the hulls of those ships
Hmm.
too, right?
Right.
So we had the influence from coastal areas, and people don't have a lot of knowledge. I mean, we don't learn this stuff in school, right? We don't
China's
have a lot of
always.
knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when I was in school, China was the bad guy. You didn't really study it was just a very superficial but negative view.
Thousands of years of history, and it's reduced to that, right?
Yeah.
So
No, absolutely.
I feel like it's a real kind of revelation for people to learn about, wait, everybody speaks a different dialect here. And I
Hmm.
always make the point, like, yeah, so when you hear some Egypt say, speak English, right? That person only speaks English for sure, I guarantee you. And they're
Yes.
talking to someone who visually looks like an outsider to them, who probably speaks either Cantonese or Mandarin,
Hmm.
sometimes both, as well as a regional dialect, as well as some English that they're just not going to speak with you because they're not that confident to do that.
Right.
But there's a lot of misinformation about, who our Chinese immigrants are. So I'm very proud to share it with people and to share the different cultural kind of underpinnings of
Mhm.
Chinese culture and the food. One of the best things about Chinese culture is that they always want to feed you.
Right.
So they don't even say hello when you come to the house or how was parking or what the weather's like. They say, what have you eaten today? La, and they take you right into the kitchen, and you're going to get some beautiful seasonal citrus. You're going to get some pastries they just picked up at their favorite bakery. When you're eating, you're thinking about the next meal, and there's holiday meals, and there's, all of these different traditions around the food. And, it's a really rich and delicious and wonderful culture. So a lot of people say when they take my tour, they feel like they've traveled without a passport. And Chinatown is one of those last immigrant enclaves where you really can feel like you've entered a different world. And so this is part of my mission with not only my tours, but also the nonprofit I founded during the end of COVID. I found out with all the agencies we have in Chinatown, many of whom are doing great, great things, people were still falling in between the cracks. And we learned that people were sitting in their apartments hungry because there was no vaccination station here. And there was no way for them to get out and get groceries because they were seeing the news of Asians being attacked all over the country. And so people were literally in their apartments going hungry. My nonprofit is called FAN Chinatown.
Yes.
So FAN is an acronym for feeding and nurturing friends and neighbors, and also being a fan of Chinatown. And we're going to work on 3 particular areas. One is food access for seniors. We used to say food insecurity, but I have learned from some of my younger friends in the food justice world that food insecurity is now an outgoing term because that makes it sound like it's a personal failing. Whereas food access recognizes that there's some structural problems when people can't get access to food, right? So we talk about food access, especially for seniors. We're going to work also on stabilizing our restaurants. They are our beating heart and our commercial core of Chinatown. In Chinatown, as opposed to other commercial districts, we actually have still families living above businesses and so forth. So it's a unique type of community, but we don't want all of the older legacy businesses to go away because they can't figure out how to recoup what they lost over 3 years of no business. Keep in mind, we've also lost all the business of the office towers. We don't have scores of office workers coming into Chinatown for lunch anymore because they're not working in these towers. We got empty towers around here. So we're going to try and do some innovative work to support some of the legacy businesses, especially. And then we're going to work on public art because, as you can see in my screensaver, public art is really important to both building community and reflecting community. So we have a really stellar board. Our treasurer is running the Boston Marathon and got us listed as an official charity for the Boston Marathon.
Great.
Got our first grant from the Boston Foundation, so that sort of helped put us on the map. So we're very pleased to be working on that. And to me, that's a way that I can, again, use the skills and the connections and the platform that I have in a way that I haven't been able to do before, but now I can. And so actually I had guests on my Chinatown tours we have a lot of fun and a lot of laughs on my tour. So I don't want to sound like it's a total downer of a tour. You could look at my TripAdvisor reviews. You'll know that's not
sure.
But we have a lot of fun. But I also do give people the truth, like here's the challenges that Chinatown is facing. We are struggling for survival. We're also vital and vibrant, and we're still rocking, we're just trying to make sure it doesn't get smaller and that, the businesses that need it get the support they need, and that people can still live here when they want to because they can still find the support they need, that sort of thing. But I've had guests actually press money into my hand and say, we don't know anybody else in Chinatown. We love what you're about, and take this and do what you can to help Chinatown. And this was even before I had the 501c3 docs done,
Right.
Listen, I'm not there yet. I'm just planning it. And they said, no, we trust you. We want to help. Like, here, take this. So that was a sign to me. And then when my friend told me that he was doing this food delivery day, as soon as the COVID restrictions were lifted, and he was shocked at how empty the kitchens were. I just cried like a Pixar cartoon when he told me, I'm like, we can't let this go. We can't let this stand. Like, no one's going hungry on my watch if I can do something about it. So we're pretty excited about what we've got planned, and this should be a good year for us. So I'm again just really happy to be at this moment in time with the ability to be that bridge to and from Chinatown, so that we can get people who want to help and get involved give them a conduit to do it, and do what we can to support the existing programs that are here.
Mhm.
It's just a lot of good stuff happening in Chinatown. We have a very vital art scene. We've got beautiful new installation in Chinatown for the Year of the Dragon.
Mhm.
Just always lots of great stuff, great for families, and a lot of great new restaurants coming in, as well as some old legacy ones hanging tough.
What if you were to give a tour to us
Uh-huh.
of Chinatown? What what are what would it be like if you were done a tour? What are the must not miss? What are the restaurants to go to? What will help people? What kind of a tour could you give us on the?
Yeah. So pretty much anything that you would want to enjoy, you could, right? If you wanted to go to like a cool, sexy place for drinks at night, you
Mhm.
could go to Shoujo and get like contemporary spins on traditional Chinese dishes, as well as actual cocktails and a huge selection of Japanese whiskeys.
Mhm.
You could go to like Waku Waku and have sake and a really excellent bowl of ramen with a 16-hour tonkatsu broth. And don't forget the duck bao there. There's a really good roast duck bao there.
Mhm.
Uh, there's a new little noodle place on Hudson called Somenya, and they do pretty authentic Japanese buckwheat noodles in-house, which is really hard to do.
Mhm.
Um, and so we have those kinds of fun contemporary places. Q Hot Pot's another one where you'll see a lot of young people. They have a bar there. And then we have traditional older places that are more, you're not really going there for a cocktail. You're going there for some really good Cantonese seafood. And there's the
Mhm.
live fish tanks there. In the old days, they used to bring the fish to your table in a bucket so you could see how lively it was. That's a really good thing if you understand fresh is better, right?
Right. Right.
To a Chinese person, a fish that was frozen before or just, of unknown origin, that would be much less desirable than something that you could see was alive and kicking just before it was cooked for you,
Mhm.
right? So it's just a different twist. But there's certainly a good handful of Cantonese restaurants that are old school style, like Jade Garden or Peach Farm, dim sum places. We're China Pearl's reopening soon. So
Mhm.
we've got our fingers crossed. It's soon, soon, soon. They had a hard time. They had planned to renovate during COVID, and that was before we understood that all the shipping was all messed up. So they couldn't get what they needed to do the renovation while the place was empty.
Right.
So they're delayed, but they are gonna open soon. So that's often one of the first places that people know because some friend of theirs who happened to be Chinese took them to a banquet there or something, or
Uh-huh.
took them to dim sum there. So that's the place they feel safe going, so they go back, right?
Mhm.
Um, but we have Halo Moon also, which is reduced in size, but still hanging tough. They got moved by this development plan, so they're now on Essex Street.
Mhm.
They do really good dim sum. They still have the carts on the weekends. Weekdays is a little quieter, so if you want a quiet dim sum experience, you can go on the weekdays.
Mhm.
We have, let's see what else. A great Hong Kong eatery barbecue place.
Mhm.
So almost entirely takeaway now. That's one of the shifts that's happened during the pandemic. Everybody got used to eating from takeaway containers.
Right.
And so some of the newer restaurants, in the face of very, very tough time finding busboys, dishwashers, waiters, right?
Mhm.
Restaurants all over Boston are having that struggle, but Chinatown is no different.
Yeah.
And so if you can get people who are accustomed to eating from takeaway containers, you remove that whole dilemma of employment problems
Mhm.
from the equation. So places like Hong Kong Eatery went almost exclusively to takeaway. And so they've done well.
Mhm.
Good for them for that. But they have a few small tables there now, so we can tuck in there and have some terrific barbecue. I live right here, so we often will get half a duck and bring it
Mhm.
home, and just really lucky. So there's also a new place that just opened on Tyler, which I haven't been to yet. But my legacy bakery that I love is Hoyuan, right on Beach Street. And that family-owned place has been turning out fabulous
Mm.
traditional pastries.
And people don't often think of Chinatown for bakeries. I always do. I used to work down
They
in
have
that area.
phenomenal bakeries. So it's really interesting because we have some influence from Portuguese. We have like dantat and potat, which are like pastéis de nata, if you've been to Lisbon or Portugal or to a Portuguese neighborhood. The Chinese version of that, which was the influence of the Portuguese. They have coconut buns or bolo bao, pineapple buns, which don't have pineapple in them, but have a sugar paste crust that looks like the skin of pineapple. So you can get sweet things, you can get savory things. The thing Chinese are really good at is combining textures and flavors. So you can get a sweet and savory thing in one bite. And to me, that's just so much more exciting than something that's just savory or just sweet.
Yes.
So
I always used to love those big Buddha cookies. I know that's nothing terribly fancy, but they're always my favorite. They reminded me of my grandfather had an Italian bakery, and somehow it just made a connection. It tasted and felt the same.
And similar to Italians, our pastries are typically like merenda. It's the afternoon snack you would have to hold you over to the main meal of the day. So sometimes people walk into the traditional shops and will say, "Is that dried shrimp on that pastry?" And it's because it's not dessert to us. Dessert is a piece of fruit, just like Italians. It's a seasonal piece of fruit, right? And then the snacks or the pastries are a sweet or savory kind of snack to hold you over to the main meal of the day. You can never be hungry, so you always have a snack that's offered to you, or most people have a snack in their purse or their bag. You're never too far from a snack if you can help it. So it's pretty fun that way.
Now, one other thing that where does Chinatown fall in terms of safety? So if people are going tourists and things, how safe is it?
I've never been harassed in Chinatown, and I've lived here for 20 years, and I'm not Chinese.
Right.
I have been harassed outside of Chinatown when someone thought I was Chinese.
Yeah.
I've been chased down the street by someone driving their car 2 miles an hour so they could roll down the window and hurl racial epithets at me because they thought I was Chinese.
Right.
I'm half Japanese, so people in Chinatown know that I'm Japanese, not Chinese. They can tell that visually. But people outside of Chinatown who are it turns out racists are not that particular about being accurate.
So sad, but true.
Yeah, so I look Asian enough to them to get their hackles up. So that has happened outside of Chinatown, but not in Chinatown.
A few years ago, we were driving to dinner with some friends, and we're just driving along on Com Ave, actually up in Brighton or Alston, and somebody threw rocks at one of the windows of the car, the passenger side front window, and I was just shocked, and I didn't even think about it. But our passenger is a Chinese Canadian woman, the wife of my friend.
Oh.
And she just looked at us, and it's like,
Oh.
this is, and it was so shocking, but it is everywhere, and has just gotten worse.
Yeah, it's people like to think that the racism is something new, but it's been brought into the light and given permission, but it's been here forever.
Yes.
I grew up in an era when I was always the only one in my class, and it's nothing new to me, but it's something that most everyone who is Asian has lived with.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, unfortunately, were raised to not share that. And so it's very interesting when an organization called Stop AAPI Hate was developed during the COVID lockdown. Local police always said, "We're not hearing anything. Nobody's coming and complaining to us." Well, that's because of a lot of different reasons. But culturally, Chinese would not go to a police station and say, "Hey, this guy just followed me down the street harassing me," or "This guy threw a rock through my car." They're not going to go to the police station. Back in China, especially during certain eras, if you went to the police station to complain about something, you might not come home. So it's not in the culture. And in Japanese culture, we say shikataganai, like we don't talk about it because we can't do anything to change it. That has changed now. And people know that they have to speak up. And so rather than report it to the local police, they'll report it to the hotline. So they had something like 2 or 3 times the number of reports of AAPI hate incidents in Boston on that hotline than we had documented here in Chinatown. I've seen, that kind of stuff happen here too.
Yeah.
But in general, I would say the neighborhood is safe.
Hmm.
It's well lit. There's
Yeah.
lots of traffic on the street, so people are out and about. Um,
Yeah, it always feels safe to me every time I've been to Chinatown. And my 17-year-old boys are often taking the T down into Chinatown with their high school buddies, and they know all the places to eat and all the places to go. And
it's a great place for kids too, because there's a lot of inexpensive food.
Right.
So, they can get, the waffles on a stick, sweet waffles. They can
Right.
get boba. They can go into the food court and
Yeah.
get Mrs. Choi's egg puff waffles in the back and dumplings, a plate of dumplings for a song.
Right.
So it's a great place for kids on a budget. You can get, college students can get lots of good eats for short money. But we
Yes.
also, I think I would love to see us start to value Chinese food for what it actually costs to produce,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of talent and a lot of ingredients that are going up in price for the restaurants too, deserve to be priced a little bit higher than what the market will bear. So that's
Yeah.
another issue altogether. But I always tell people to look very carefully when we're doing a tour and notice, like the guys who are doing the deliveries, and they're doing it by hand truck because the streets are too small for the delivery trucks to get down
Right.
in the 100-degree days, in the
Mhm.
rain, in the snow. They are taking 50-pound bags of flour, sugar, rice up and down stairs because
Yeah.
we don't have ramps, and all of that work gets built into the price of your very inexpensive and very delicious food.
Yeah.
So where's it coming out of, right? Where's that margin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's tough, but we're seeing some newer restaurants come in that are good and serving delicious food, and many of them are doing sort of a gut reno. So we now have a bright, shiny, new, clean place here or there, and they're serving us good food, and it's still Chinese food, so that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of wistful for the legacy places, and I don't mind a place that's a little rough around the edges, and I don't mind going through, a point and shoot method of ordering, right? That guy's eating something that looks really good there. I want what he's having. And they
Yeah.
look at me and I'm not Chinese, and they'll say, oh, you might enjoy some sweet and sour pork instead. No, no, I want that. I want that. And now I can't really do that because it's a set menu of things that, don't include all those different options. If I see the ladies in the back of the restaurant cleaning some produce that just came in, that's
Mhm.
what I'm ordering because
Right.
that just came in, right?
Yes.
So I kind of long for those days to stick around. Of course, I don't know that that's going to be the way the world goes, but I'm going to
Well,
try and make
since
sure they have a fighting chance if they
yeah.
want to.
But certainly since COVID, the entire metric of how to run a restaurant, what a restaurant is, has just been completely turned on its head. And it needed to. It was going that way for a long time. Wasn't like the wheels weren't falling off the cart. But it just really seemed to accentuate that with just about every restaurant.
Yeah, there's a building in Chinatown that I often take tours to see, where it has a beautiful mural by the artist Shayna Liu that was funded by Asian Community Development Corp. They're our main affordable housing organization, and they got Shayna Liu's mural redone recently. And there's a cartoon she did on my blog about the way that the community came together sort of organically when she arrived for the day of taking it apart to renovate it.
Mm-hmm.
But the building that it's on was an SRO, single room occupancy. So these were quite common in immigrant communities
Sure.
because you have laborers who were there without families,
Mm-hmm.
who needed just a clean, safe place to sleep. And it was sort of like a dorm. There would be a shared bathroom at the end of the hall.
Right.
Those would be so helpful to all of Boston restaurants because the
Mm-hmm.
fact is the busboys and the dishwashers and the servers even can't afford to live in Boston proper, and they
Right.
can't get back and forth by Uber because that would eat their entire paycheck. They
Yeah.
can't get back and forth by car because, I mean, car's the only way to do it because the trains don't run those hours. So,
Mm-hmm.
if we had a public-private investment in SROs in downtown Boston, you could have restaurant workers who could afford to live downtown
Yeah.
and close to the restaurants that need their work.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes some political will and it takes some public-private partnership. We can't just keep letting the developers with money decide what we get.
Right. No, that's absolutely. So let's talk about your tours. What Do people? How does it work? I guess I'll be very simple. Do people schedule time with you? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so soon it will be quite easy to schedule on my new website. We're almost there. But what typically I will do is a public tour, which is anybody can um, come and join that tour on 2 or 3 Saturdays per month.
Hmm.
And then people who want to pay a little bit more for a private tour can hire me to do a tour just for them and their group on other days of the month.
And what is the website where people would go? I know it's not finished yet, but when it's finished.
They can find me at jacquelinechurch.com, and that will have links to however else they can find me. I'm all over social media too, at JC Craves on Instagram,
Hmm.
because I'm always craving something. And my reviews are on TripAdvisor for the tours. I also have fanchinatown.org,
Hmm.
and that's my nonprofit. If people want to learn about the nonprofit or sign up to get notifications of, volunteer days, we're going
Or
to
donate, right? I imagine they could donate
donate.
there.
Thank you very much. Yes, donations are welcome.
Hmm.
Um, we have John's Give and Gain site for the Boston Marathon too. So he's set himself a $5,000 goal. I think he's about a quarter of the way there.
Great.
Uh, so we're hoping that we can help him get to 5,000 for us. Um, so that's how people can find me. And I'm down for a meal. So sometimes I'll have someone who's coming through the town. Like I've had a couple who came through, they had a layover unexpectedly, and they said, we've just got a couple of hours and we're very close to Chinatown. It looks like from Logan. I think it's close. Can you do something for us? Sure. Come on in. Let's do what we can do. So I'm happy to work with people. It's really my joy to share it with people.
Hmm.
Chinatown is just rich and wonderful. You can come 100 times and not eat the same thing twice.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll always see something amazing and different from what you'll see anywhere else every
Well,
time.
It sounds great. I mean, I encourage anyone to take a tour, and I think that you may be hearing from us as well sometime soon because it sounds like it would be a wonderful experience. Uh, is there anything that we haven't talked about? Did we not cover anything?
I just had, let's see, I'm a freelance writer too, so I have written before about preserving Chinatown for Edible Boston,
hmm.
um, sort of a love letter to Chinatown from on Food and Wine. But I also just did my very first podcast a couple weeks ago
Hmm.
for the Meet Boston podcast called Boston Found.
Yes.
They let me just jabber about Chinatown for a full hour, so they can hear me there too. But
Yeah, I listened to that as well, and it was a terrific, really enjoyable. I encourage anyone to listen to it.
yeah, we got to share a lot of the Lunar New Year stuff, which just ended. My
Right.
ears are still ringing from the firecrackers and the drums and cymbals, but it was really great. This Lunar New Year Lion Dance Parade, which is the finale of the 2-week holiday.
Hmm.
The past couple years with COVID, with snow, with rain, we had the parade, but people were cold and shivering, and there weren't that many people coming out. But this was really phenomenal. It was packed. I would say there was easily 1,000 people in Chinatown.
Wow.
It was just amazing. So it was great to see my favorite Wu Ching White Crane um, Kung Fu studio. They trained the little kids. And
Hmm.
I got to tell you, the last
Yeah.
dance I saw before I left, I was looking for them all day because I had a red envelope to give them. And I wanted to say hi. And I caught them just by accident going up to Taiwan Cafe, which is another great restaurant.
Hmm.
Uh, and I caught them. But at the very end, there was a little baby lion who was just learning the moves, learning the dance, right?
Yeah.
As well as Adriana and the big lion. But there was a little boy who was coaching the little lion. And he was showing him or her, I don't know, how to
Hmm.
grab an orange and toss it.
Uh,
And so the baby lion grabbed the orange and kind of tossed it. But the little boy who was coaching gave them applause and said, "Good job, good job." And it just said everything to me about these kinds of organizations that are training the kids not only in a traditional martial art and a traditional dance form,
yeah.
but also in how to encourage each other and lift each other up.
Hmm.
To me, that one, I'm going to get teary now, but that one little moment, it just tells you so much about the character and about the people and about the community. So just love it.
Oh, well, that's fabulous. Well, this has been terrific. Thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate you giving me this time and terrific stories and recommendations, and everything that we talked about was great, and I found tremendously interesting. So
Thank you so much. Are you hungry yet?
I am starving. That was my interview with Jackie Church. She's tremendously interesting. I loved all of the restaurant suggestions, and sometimes conversations, even around food, have to get real and talk about things like anti-Asian sentiment or racism. Well, anyway, it was a great conversation. I loved the story at the end about the little lion. It was very touching. See you next week on Foodytime.